Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Tuesday the 1st of December 2015 and we are reporting briefly on 11 conspiracy theories which still abound after many years. We are very much aware that a number of our subscribers and viewers believe in what some may regard as conspiracy theories. We thought we would just mention 11 of the 33 prominent ones we have identified, just to gauge our members' views on them. Number 1. The Illuminati, Freemasons, and the New World Order. Conspiracy theorists believe that there exists a conspiracy in which powerful and secretive groups, such as the Illuminati, the Masons, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, and others, are plotting to rule mankind with a single world government under the auspices of a new world order. These groups are alleged to use political finance, social engineering, mind control, and fear-based propaganda to achieve their aims. Signs of the New World Order are said to be the pyramid on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States, the pyramidal eye on the American dollar bill, disturbing murals at Denver International Airport, and pentagrams in city plans. It is often remarked that at least 12 US presidents, and it's believed more, were Freemasons. International organizations such as the World Bank, the IMF, the European Union, the United Nations, and NATO are listed as founding organizations of the New World Order. 2. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Despite having apparently been discredited for at least 100 years, belief in this document has proved remarkably resilient on the internet. The text takes the form of an instruction manual to a new member of the Elders, describing how they will run the world through control of the media and finance, and replace the traditional social order with one based on mass manipulation. The forgery was first published in Russia in 1903, translated into multiple languages and disseminated internationally in the early part of the 20th century. According to the claims made by some of its publishers, the protocols are the minutes of a late 19th century meeting where Jewish leaders discussed their goal of global Jewish hegemony by subverting the morals of Gentiles and by controlling the press and the world's economies. Scholars generally agree that the Okhrana, the secret police of the Russian Empire, fabricated the text in the late 1890s or early 1900s, but belief in it still persists, particularly in the Middle East. This document has been described as an anti-Semitic fabricated text purporting to describe a Jewish plan for global domination. Henry Ford funded printing of 500,000 copies that were distributed throughout the US in the 1920s, and Adolf Hitler was a major proponent. 3. The North American Union. This is a theoretical regional union of Canada, Mexico, and United States, similar in structure to the European Union, sometimes including a common currency called the Amiro. Conspiracy theorists who believe that the three countries are planning for this state, that it is part of a global conspiracy to set up something called the New World Order. Officials from all three nations have repeatedly denied that there are plans to create a North American Union, although the idea has been proposed in academic circles, either as a union or as a North American community, as proposed by the Independent Task Force on North America. In an online column for the cable news network earlier this year, Andres Martinez, editorial director of Zocalo Public Square and professor of practice at the Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University, and Daniel Kurtz Phelan, an Eric and Wendy Schmidt Fellow at New America, and a former advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's policy planning staff, argue for a European-style merger between the US, Canada, and Mexico. Even though CNN attempted to ridicule former US Republican Ron Paul for his previous mention of a North American Union. 4. 9/11. Though terrorists of Al-Qaeda have claimed responsibility for the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon and Washington, that occurred on September 11, 2001, many believe that the US government knew of the upcoming attack and did nothing. Conspiracy theorists believe that the way the two towers collapsed proves that the US government either planned the attack or aided in the complete destruction of the towers to fuel hatred and to justify the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Despite repeated claims by Al-Qaeda that it planned, organized, and orchestrated the attacks, several official and unofficial investigations into the collapse of the Twin Towers, which concluded that structural failure was responsible, the conspiracy theories continue to grow in strength. A number believe that the Bush administration deliberately turned a blind eye to those warnings because it wanted a pretext to launch wars in the Middle East, to usher in another century of American hegemony. A large group of people, collectively called the 9/11 Truth Movement, cite evidence that an airliner did not hit the Pentagon and that the World Trade Center could not have been brought down by airliner impacts and burning aviation fuel alone. Interestingly, it is also argued that the former genuine conspiracy involving a plan by the Joint Chiefs of Staff to launch a fake Cuban terror campaign on American soil to persuade the US public to support an invasion against Castro, but was quashed by John F. Kennedy, lends some support that there are powers within the US willing to kill its own people to justify foreign country incursions. Jesus and Mary Magdalene. The idea that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were actually married has been a widely held conspiracy since the discovery of the Gospel of Philip in 1945, and which was later glorified in the film The Da Vinci Code. In the Gospel of Philip, Mary Magdalene, who is referred to as Jesus Koinonos, a Greek term for companion or partner, is depicted as being closer to Jesus than any other apostle, and it is alleged that the two kissed frequently. Some also believe they had one or more children, and that those children or their descendants emigrated to southern France. Once there, they intermarried with the noble families that would eventually become the Merovingian dynasty, whose special claim to the throne of France is championed today by a secret society called the Priory of Zion. It must be stated that religious scholars are divided over this. 6. Fluoridation. Fluoride is commonly added to drinking water as a way to reduce tooth decay. However, there has been some evidence that there could be some harmful side effects from fluoride, and conspiracy theorists believe that this information is known and recognized by those responsible for adding the fluoride, but that they continue the practice regardless. Drug companies have been targeted as possible beneficiaries, as they would profit from a population with ill health. Another motive is that fluoride lowers mental abilities, thereby dumbing down the entire population. According to Dr. Dean Burke, biochemist, founder of Biotin and former chief chemist at the National Cancer Institute of Health, and we quote, "In point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer deaths than any other chemical. When you have power, you don't have to tell the truth. That's a rule that's been working in this world for generations. There are a great many people who don't tell the truth when they are in power, in administrative positions. Fluoride amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is some of the most conclusive scientific and biological evidence that I have come across in my 50 years in the field of cancer research." Unquote. 7. The death of Princess Diana. Almost immediately after news was broadcast of her death, conspiracies abound that the princess was murdered by the royal family to stop Diana from releasing embarrassing and damaging information about ex-husband Prince Charles. Another theory is that rogue elements in the British Secret Service decided that Diana's relationship with Mr. Al Fayed's son, Dodi Fayed, was a threat to the monarchy and therefore to the British state. A plot was hatched in which a white Fiat Uno carrying agents was sent to blind and disorientate driver Henry Paul as he sped through the Paris underpass, pursued by photographers. Later, Paul's blood was switched with a sample of somebody who had drunk a lot of alcohol. Needless to say, the investigations carried out since have found no grounds for conspiracy. 8. The AIDS virus. Conspiracy theorists believe that the AIDS virus was created in a laboratory and injected into homosexuals and African Americans by ruse of a hepatitis B experiment back in 1978. Thabo Mbeki, the former South African president, said that the scientific claims that the disease originated in Africa is false, and that the US government actually created the virus in a lab and is trying to place the blame on Africa. Some believe that the AIDS virus was created by the CIA to rid the country of homosexuals and African Americans, and to weaken the group's numbers. Based on the theories of Dr. William Campbell Douglas, many believe that HIV was genetically engineered in 1974 by the World Health Organization. Dr. Douglas believed that it was a cold-blooded attempt to create a killer virus, which was then used in a successful experiment in Africa. Others have claimed that it was created by the CIA or the KGB as a means to reduce world population. Conspiracy 9. Roswell. In 1947, a press release was issued from the Roswell Army Airfield claiming that a flying disc had been discovered from a ranch in New Mexico. Rumors of bodies being found at the crash site caused many conspiracy theorists to believe that the US government is keeping the truth of aliens from the public. Numerous witnesses reported seeing metallic debris scattered over a wide area, and at least one reported seeing a blazing craft crossing the sky shortly before it crashed. Later, the military took back its claim and said that, in fact, it was just a weather balloon that was recovered, and that the bodies were actually test dummies. In 1989, former mortician Glenn Dennis claimed that he was involved in alien autopsies, which were carried out at the Roswell Air Force Base. A report by the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force, released in 1995, concluded that the reported recovered material in 1947 was likely debris from a secret government program called Project Mogul, which involved high-altitude balloons meant to detect sound waves generated by Soviet atom bomb tests and ballistic missiles. A second report, released in 1997, concluded that reports of alien bodies were likely a combination of innocently transformed memories of military accidents involving injured or killed personnel, and the recovery of anthropomorphic dummies in military programs like Project High Dive, conducted in the 1950s. Walter Haut, the Roswell Army Airfield Public Affairs Officer, who had drafted the initial press release on the 8th of July 1947, claims in an affidavit signed in 2002 that he saw alien corpses and a craft, and that he had been involved in a military cover-up. Haut died in 2005. 10. Chemtrails. Conspiracy theorists believe that some contrails, which consist of ice crystals of water vapor condensed behind aircraft, actually result from chemicals or biological agents being deliberately sprayed at high altitude for some undisclosed purpose. They believe that the chemicals being sprayed are part of a wider plot that involves the so-called New World Order and is being directed by shadowy forces within the government. The existence of chemtrails has been repeatedly denied by federal agencies and scientists. Dr. Matthew Watson, PhD, a researcher in the Department of Earth Sciences at the University of Bristol, believes that chemtrails is the idea of injecting stratospheric particles into the atmosphere to combat the effects of climate change, and warns against this practice. Quote, "If we ever deploy these technologies, it will be the closest indication yet that we failed as planetary stewards. While it is clear that temperatures could be reduced during deployment, the misstep is considerable. Personally, this stuff terrifies me." Unquote. Conspiracy 11. Now for the English literary amongst us. Who really wrote the plays of Shakespeare? Many believe that Shakespeare did not have sufficient education to write the profound works which have been attributed to him. It is believed by some that writers such as Christopher Marlowe, Ben Jonson, Francis Bacon, William Stanley, 6th Earl of Derby, and Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, or Sir Walter Raleigh actually wrote the scripts. The difficulty is that very little biographical information exists about Shakespeare, and so this will prove a difficult one to prove. So there we have it, 11 conspiracies to whet your appetites and comment upon. It will genuinely be interesting to see where our viewers and subscribers rest on these issues. By the way, as this is a gold and silver channel, the price of gold currently stands at $1,068, slightly up on the day, but slightly down on its day peak of $1,074. And silver stands at $14.18, again slightly up, and slightly below its intraday peak of $14.24. We hope you found this video helpful and informative, and would appreciate it if you would give it a thumb up, comment, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Please also share this video on Twitter and follow us at Illuminati Silver. Disclaimer. Silver Illuminati owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management, and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice, and merely represent the personal views of its owners.